All right, let's discuss the Arab Spring further. Joining us now is Professor Mark Tomass. He's an adjunct professor at Harvard University. Thank you very much, Professor Tomass, for being with us on this news hour. Now, tell me, what are the fundamental lessons from the Arab Spring?
Good question, Jafar. It's good to hear a question like that. Take yourself a little bit to the back. Take yourself aback and think about the general picture. What happened, what went wrong, and what can be done about it. What we need to do is look at each country separately, because the population in each country has its own circumstances, its own divisions. Most importantly, the religious makeup of the people are different in these countries. So the problems that you find in Tunisia would be different from Egypt, would be different from Syria, so on, would be different from Iraq. Which one to take? That's the challenge. I heard your program presenter, he was talking about Egypt, for example. What we have to distinguish between the demands of the population, the demands of the people. Yes, people want to have some sort of freedom. In other words, they want to express themselves politically. They want to have the government to be moderately free of corruption, moderately caring about its population, and they want to feel that they are free in the sense that there would be no security police coming after them. They want to live their life with dignity in that sense. That said, however, once you have political forces on the ground, the political forces now are going to unleash a different level of, let's say, a different level of concerns, and that is, what is the political representation of the protest? Are they non-political? Let's say people who represent the population without any political agenda, or they are others? In Egypt, what turned out to be the organization of the Muslim Brothers captured let's say, the imagination of the protests, and they represented them against the government of Hosni Mubarak. And that made a lot of people people in power alarmed. They were afraid that the rule of the military is going to be destabilized by the organization if they had a free election and if they got to power. And that's exactly what happened. So,
right.
So you have the traditional forces, the military, and these traditional nominal kind of political parties that don't look like political parties, but they are supported by the military, versus the organization of the Muslim Brotherhood. Both of them clashed, and as a result, the coup took place to remove them. And that situation will be different, for example, a little bit to the north in Syria.
Okay. Now, Professor Tomass, let me ask you, had the Arab Spring had not taken place, do you think the Middle East would be a much safer, much livable, much better place?
Unfortunately, yes. The problem was well, again, we have to look at each country separately. Maybe it was good for Tunisia. In Egypt, it's hard to say. It is undetermined. I mean, you ended up in Egypt. The same Mubarak regime reproduced itself with more repression than before. So no solution was produced in Egypt. In Syria, it was a disaster, a catastrophe. Right. The weaponization of the protests and making it into an armed rebellion against the regime created a civil war and attracted all sorts of regional and international powers in Syria that actually now you cannot speak about Syria, you cannot speak about a Syrian government, you cannot speak about a particular opposition to the Syrian government. So there is, it's a total, let's say, disintegration of society, total disintegration of the country. It only, at this point, it only exists on the map. So in Syria, definitely not better than before, because what we have now, the regime that is still in power, is worse than before in all respects. It's worse than before in terms of respect of human rights. It's worse than before in terms of the economic administration of the country. It's worse than before even in symbolic terms. It has not adopted any of the aspirations of those people who went into the streets the first few months.
Right, so except for a few countries, the Arab Spring has proved to be a catastrophe, right?
Yes.
All right,
Yes,
now,
and
Professor...
there are good reasons for it. Yes, go ahead.
Right, Professor Tomass, now I want to broaden the discussion here. I want to talk about the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden's policy towards the Middle East. Now, Joe Biden has reversed many of President Donald Trump's controversial policies, but he won't undo moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, would he?
He will not, because he wouldn't dare to. If he reverses any of the gains that the U.S. made, that Israel made with the help of the U.S. in terms of the recognition of Jerusalem as a capital of Israel and the recognition of Israeli sovereignty over the occupied Golan Heights, he will lose credibility. I think he would have a significant political opposition in the United States that will discredit him and would make his presidency an unsuccessful one. So I don't think he dares to withdraw from these promises. The question is, what can he do regarding the U.S. Conflict with Iran? That would be, I think, this is where we can see.
Professor, before you come to Iran, let me interject here. When you say he won't dare, you are indicating, correct me if I'm wrong, you are indicating that he fears something. Who does he fear? What is he scared of?
Well, he fears the pro-Israeli lobby. Not just the pro-Israeli lobby, but actually, well, I mean, the pro-Israeli lobby, let me be clear here, we don't really mean people from Israel who pay people in the U.S. in order to take decisions. The pro-Israeli lobby is a big lobby here. It includes Christian fundamentalists, for example. Probably they are as powerful as the Israeli pro-Israeli lobby, because you have a large number of Christian fundamentalists who believe that Jerusalem should be under the control of the Jewish people, because they believe in an apocalyptic scenario where Jesus Christ will return, and he will have to return to Jerusalem, and for him to return to Jerusalem, it has to be completely Jewish, completely controlled by a Jewish authority. Yes, I'm sorry that I have to talk about these things, but this is a reality. We are talking about people who imagine an apocalyptic world. They actually imagine an end of the world where Jesus will return. So they were, I think Donald Trump was very clear about that. He said there are Christians who supported him more than Jewish people, right? And that is the reason why, because for a long time, this notion has become politicized and found its way all the way to the U.S. Government. So I can't see how President Biden will back off on these issues.
Okay, now, Professor, let's talk about Iran. There are expectations that the Biden administration would be a little less harsher on Iran in comparison to the Trump administration. How accurate are these assumptions or expectations?
I am also pessimistic about President Biden being able to return to the same sort of agreement that he had with Iran. I don't think he will be able to give up the Israeli demand of Iran abandons its missile program and destroys its missile capabilities. I think he had made, at least people in his team made that clear, that they still want the same thing that Donald Trump wanted, except that maybe because there is a new administration, they would want to give some force to talking, like let's talk now, let's sit down and talk to them. There is a new atmosphere, but practically speaking, I can't see that how President Biden will again give up that concession that President Donald Trump gave to the pro-Israeli lobby. That is, they want Iran to be just Iran, that is confined within the Republic of Iran, withdraw from Iraq, withdraw from Syria, withdraw from Lebanon, and not have any weapons more than traditional short-range weapons that would not in any way threaten Israel. So, again, if President Biden signals that he wants to return to the same agreement that Barack Obama signed with Iran, I think you will see him discredited.
Okay. Now, Professor, let's talk about Syria. It's been more than 9 years now. Millions of Syrians are scattered across the world. Hundreds of thousands have died. And a solution to this seemingly never-ending conflict is still out of sight. Over the past few weeks, we witnessed some terrorist attacks taking place in Syria. So what exactly is going on in Syria right now? And how do you think the Biden administration is going to navigate through the Syrian conflict?
Well, one important observation that we can make is that there is a resurgence of ISIS, which gives a big question mark. Why ISIS has resurged right now? How did it get? Where did it get its weapons from? Where did it get its financing from? And the timing is very questionable. This could explain actually the new troops coming into Syria from Iraq. But the U.S. actually doesn't need an excuse to be in Syria, although politically speaking, maybe it would sound better for the U.S. Defense Department to say that we are there in order to fight ISIS. But the project, as looks to me, is very clear. The project is to have eastern Syria cut off from the rest, that is the Mesopotamian part of Syria to be cut off, and be run by let's say, a different political system, primarily controlled by the YPG, but modified in a way that would include the other Arab tribes. So that is on one side. On the other side, they want the U.S. and Israel, they want Iran to be out of the scene. The problem with that is, what is the Syrian regime going to do regarding these demands? The Syrian regime would be afraid if they ask the Iranians to go out, or not the Iranians particularly, but they are more like militias supported by Iran. They are under Iranian command.
Right.
If they want them to leave, then the Syrian regime feels that it had lost one important part that is protecting it. So without any guarantees from Israel, that is, if we ask the Iranians to leave, if you would let us survive, then I don't see that can happen. So that also may explain the rumors that I'm hearing in the past 5 days, that there are meetings taking place between Syrian officials and the Israelis, with the managed by Russia. That is, there is some sort of negotiation is taking place. And as I predicted many months ago with you, Jafar, if you remember on your program, what is demanded is that Syria has an agreement with Israel, formally, let's say, nominally accepting some sort of giving up major parts of the Golan Heights, but some concessions will be given to it, so that it will claim to its public that we have taken part of it, we have gotten parts of the Golan Heights, and that now we are going to change our trajectory. We are going to leave what they call the resistance axis, because there is no need for resistance anymore. Therefore, we are going to have normalize with Israel, and finally remove one of the major military challenges that Syria has been facing. And just to let me remind your viewers, there has been more than 1,000, and I emphasize more than 1,000 military strikes by Israel since the beginning of the Arab Spring uprising all over Syrian territories, which gives you also, makes you think, what is the role of Russia in this? What I have said in the past, it looks to me not. We don't have anything written for us to say this is what is happening, but just by analyzing the facts, it looks like there is an agreement between Russia and Israel that Israel would be allowed to bombard anything it wants and anywhere in Syria except threatening the physical safety of the Syrian leadership.
Right.
So
Now,
here you have.
sure, finish your answer, Professor. Okay.
I mean, here you have it. You see, Russia is there. Russia is controlling the 5th Division. It's a Syrian army controlled by Russia. Iran is controlling the 4th Division, which is also Syrian army controlled by Iran. And then you have the Syrian army proper, that is more like militia now, groups of militias, as opposed to an army proper. So you have all of these forces, and you have the Israelis from the air.
Right.
That is where nobody is challenging them. So what can you say about the country? There is no country anymore.
Okay. Now, Professor, while you were answering this question, I wondered, when I joined this channel as a journalist, one of my first programs was on Syria with you. It's been more than 3 years, and we're still talking about the Syrian conflict. Has anything changed from the past 3 years? Well, to be honest, I don't really know. As a journalist, I don't know if anything has changed. It has only gotten worse, it seems like. Yeah, one thing has certainly changed. Syria does not make headlines as it used to back in 2017 and 2016. Now, this could be due to many factors. So, Professor, let me ask you. I'm sure many who are watching us right now must be wondering, what is the solution to the Syrian conflict? What would it take for it to finally end? It's been more than a decade now.
What I would like to see is Middle Easterners, Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, have more confidence in themselves and give more attention to their people as opposed to what international powers want. Ultimately, these people have to live together, so they have to solve their problems. They have to stop threatening each other. They have to talk to each other, to generate confidence among each other. If they do that, there would be no place. There will be the foreign international forces will have no excuse. They will have no one to rely on the ground, because what we see now in Syria are all proxy groups fighting on behalf of somebody else. So without these countries coming together and comforting each other that, look, we are not a threat to you. So let our people live in peace. That way it would be better for everybody else. At present, as am I speaking, and I'm not using this figuratively, the Syrian people are starving. I see them not having enough food. I see people standing in line for an entire day to get 2 kilograms of bread. If somebody is willing to stand an entire day to get 2 kilograms of bread, you know that he has no money to buy any food. So we have the humanitarian situation is catastrophic, and I don't see how this is good for anybody. The number of refugees are in the millions. The number of dead are approximately 600,000 to 700,000, both armed and civilian. To what extent is this? Will this continue this way? It cannot be positive, because out of this disenchantment, out of this poverty, bad things can happen, and more refugees will flood to other countries. Maybe the people will start to take up arms. There will be maybe more chaos. I don't know what it would take, Jafar. I don't know why the leaders of these countries don't come together and for humanity's sake give priority to their people instead of having their own ambitions rule over their mind. I think that's
so unfortunate, isn't it? That's so unfortunate. I mean, so many human beings have lost their lives. Millions are scattered across the world, and life just moves on. I mean, people have stopped paying attention to the plight of innocent Syrians, right?
Right, and you see how what had attracted the attention of people in the West. There were major networks, they were focusing on Syria at the time, and they stopped focusing on Syria, so it disappeared from, let's say, public attention. Of course, the fact that there was a war raging, although the war was raging for a long time, but sometimes you see a spike in coverage and sometimes it goes down. So once the international attention has been moved away, networks are no longer interested because it's no longer news. It's just a civil war that has been taking a long time. So it loses its attractiveness for network news. So while people will sit and think that some major change is going to take place.
Professor, it almost seems like waking up in the morning, opening up your newspapers and reading something about Syria is a routine. Reading how many people died in Syria today is a routine. You open up your newspapers and the first thing you read is Syria, okay, this many people died. People have internalized this whole conflict. It almost seems like it has become part of their routine, right?
Right. They kind of got used to it the same way they get used to everything else. And what is sad is that people think that Joe Biden is going to solve their problem. That if you listen to the Arab media, they think that the U.S. Has somehow magic powers to bring peace to everybody or impose solutions that people don't want. All the U.S. can do, like any imperial power, they can use people that are in these countries. They can use them against each other. The U.S. is not interested in entering into a major war in Syria the same way it entered a war with Iraq. In Iraq, it cannot afford that politically. So it has to rely on domestic forces. So if domestic forces are willing to do that, are willing to give up their independence to a foreign force, then there will be no solution. There will be no. It will continue. And unfortunately, again, Jafar, I am more pessimistic than I was with you 3 years ago. I remember you asked me a few times that they were having some meetings about the Constitution. You asked me then, you saw that I had a negative reaction. You said, isn't there something positive you could say? I didn't have anything.
I get you now,
positive.
Professor. I do get you now. I mean, there's still a lot more to talk about the Syrian conflict, but unfortunately, we are short on time. Professor Mark Tomass, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for talking to us on A News.
Thank you, Jafar.